Hello! I want to further my enjoyment and excitement. You know, I'm going to be honest with you. I recorded this whole damn video. 54 minutes was the total that it was. And when I went into Adobe Premiere, none of the audio was recording the whole time. I've done that a few times, actually. One time it was a live stream here on YouTube. I went like 40-some minutes without realizing my microphone wasn't on. But that's not the case this time. In this video, I want to discuss my castings for Aegon, a theory that I have about Catelyn Stark, and who's the best at having sex in A Song of Ice and Fire. Please, if you enjoy this kind of content, slap a like on it. Like goal is going to be 420. Get it? And also, if you're watching this on Patreon, thank you for your support. And if you're watching this on YouTube, thank you for your support as well. Please subscribe, slap a like on this video like I just said. I don't know why I keep repeating that. And also turn notifications on. There's all personalized and none, but if you click on all, you should get alerted every time I drop a video or a short or a post in the community section, anything like that. Please turn those notifs on. Alright, so before I actually do my castings, my casting choices, I want to explain something. Because I saw people, not just people, every other comment on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. I have a TikTok account that's linked in the About section of my YouTube page. I don't really post there that often, but I have been recently. And also on Reddit, right? The Aegon movie is coming out, right? We're getting a TV show. They're going to greenlight it probably quickly. We're going to start hearing We'll probably hear casting news and it moving into production by the end of this year, which is really exciting because when you think about it, there's only 8 months left in this year, so it's flying by, right? But check it. Why is everybody so mad? Everybody, like, literally goes, there's so many more interesting time periods, characters, or whoever that exist outside of Aegon's conquest. Why are they choosing that to showcase? Well, let me explain something to you. As massive fans, as I can speak for myself, I'm not going to speak for anybody else but myself. I have read the series 8 times, okay? That's Game of Thrones, Clash of Kings, Storm of Sword, Feast for Crows, Dance with Dragons, and then the Winds of Wind sample chapters. Speaking of which, I got a Barristan Selmy one coming out. I've been working on it for the past couple of days. I've read the world books, so World of Ice and Fire, Fire and Blood. You can kind of call the Dunk and Egg world books. Not really. They're like a novella written all from the POV of Sir Duncan the Tall. It's amazing. That takes place 90 years before the main events of a Game of Thrones. We have this House of the Dragon TV show, the actual Game of Thrones TV show that really kicked off all this. Like, I would have never heard of the books and read them this many times and been so immersed in this world if it wasn't for the Game of Thrones TV show. That's why I call it the greatest show of all time, right? But let me get back on track here. They're choosing Aegon's conquest, right? Because that's the when you look at the entire scope of the story, when you read everything, Aegon's conquest is the biggest movie potential, right? To bring in the most eyes. One of the things that happens when, Warner Brothers or HBO or whatever decides to do something, they have to funnel hundreds of millions of dollars to get us a product that they think we'll like or will want, right? Case and show an example, or however the legal kind of shit terms or whatever. Game of Thrones. It was amazing. They poured millions of dollars into a pilot that was never shown, reshot the whole thing, then filmed the first season. It was amazing. One of the best first seasons of any show ever, right? That comes with risk. So they kind of went through Martin's world, right? They picked the Dance with Dragons. We're probably eventually going to get Blackfire Rebellions because there is a Dunk and Egg series in the works. There's a writer attached to it, Steve Conrad, the guy that brought us Rome, right? You have to pick and choose what's the most exciting visually to represent on screen. Aegon's Conquest. This dude, right, shows up to the savage Westeros. Westeros doesn't look anything like how it does in the main series, Game of Thrones, or the main series, The Song of Ice and Fire books. Westeros doesn't look anything like that, for the most part, aside from the north, right? When Aegon comes over, because the Andals went through Westeros and carved out their land. The first men before that came over to Westeros and carved out their land. And even before that, there was an unknown race of dragon-riding individuals that were not the Valyrians. They predate the Valyrians. They were already in Westeros doing shit like making Old Town, trying to enslave elder races. There was this massive battle that happened outside of Old Town in this place called Battle Isle that was literally, most likely, there's no proof of it, but it's referenced heavily in World of Ice and Fire, that there was dragons fighting giants who teamed up with the Children of the Forest, because the Children of the Forest have teamed up before. They've fought wars, but they've also teamed up, just like the first men, when they first came over, fought the Children of the Forest, but then teamed up with them to try to repel the Andal invasion, right? So, when you look at that, all of that, you can kind of get people excited because you have Aegon the Conqueror. He's like the most well-known individual outside of Daenerys and Jon Snow from the Targaryen household, right? You also have the Mad King, but really it's Aegon the Conqueror. They talk about him a bunch in Game of Thrones, and then more recently in House of the Dragon. There's all these characters who are named after this visual, Aegon the Conqueror. So if you go back to House of the Dragon episode 1, the Old King, Jaehaerys, Aegon the Conqueror is his grandfather. We knew this was going to happen. We knew that we're going to be telling the story of right before them, because look at the damn intro. There's all these bloodlines that lead out to all these different places. In House of the Dragon, the idea that it was going to be an anthology series was literally pushed out into the universe right before House of the Dragon came out. So it just makes the most sense to tell Aegon's story. My opinion, they could do two things. One, they could do the movie, right? Because the movie's supposed to lead into a show, so they're both going to kind of be greenlit at the same time. It's going to be exciting, right? I couldn't be more excited, right? So you could do two things. One is you have Aegon's conquest of Westeros shown mostly in the movie. Maybe there's a few time jumps. Maybe they just show the most exciting moments. Maybe the movie starts when Aegon's already started conquering Westeros. And then the show would be Maegor the Cruel, Aenys, the Black Brides. Maegor's Black Brides. Maegor is probably just as enigmatic as Aegon the Conqueror himself, and what we could learn is that Maegor was potentially a better person than his father, but he was corrupted over time, and that's what the show would be about. But the movie's about Aegon's conquest, but the show is about his children, sons of the dragon, and then eventually we get Maegor in the story of the Black Brides. Maegor the Cruel is like, in Westerosi history, the worst king ever to have existed, right? You could argue that Aegon, the Unworthy, the one who basically created all the Blackfire rebellions that really wiped out a large chunk of Targaryens, right? You could say he's a terrible king. You could say the Mad King himself is terrible. But really, they all sort of pale in comparison to the legacy of Maegor the Cruel, right? That's one way they could do it. The second way they could do it is the movie would actually be the Doom of Valyria. So the movie would explain why House of the Dragon is why House Targaryen is in Westeros to begin with. Because for the most part, we don't see any other Valyrians, any other dragon-riding families from Valyria in Westeros. The movie would be about the Doom. So 12 years before, Aenar the Exile and his daughter Daenys the Dreamer leave the peninsula of Valyria with not just like their stuff. They don't just pack up like whatever's on them and leave, right? No, they take every member of their family, all the extended members, all of their possessions, all of their dragons who were alive at that time, all of their eggs, all of their personal wealth, every single thing that they owned in the Valyrian freehold was taken to Dragonstone 12 years before the Doom of Valyria. So that's what this movie would be about. It would be about why the hell did they do this? And then about maybe after an hour, the movie would probably be 3 hours. That's the running time for most movies now. But after you explain that in the first hour, then you time jump to Aegon the Conqueror. The time jump would be... I just messed that up. Let me go back. The movie would be about Aenar the Exile going to Westeros. Then we have the Doom 12 years later. That would be the movie, right? Massive Doom of Valyria. You have all these dragon riders that look all different types of people. You could make it as diverse as possible, and it's in canon. You're not just pandering to a modern audience that honestly most people don't. Nobody likes being pandered to, right? We'll just say that, right? So you could do that, and then the TV series would be about Aegon conquering Westeros. So it would just, in my opinion, that's perfect. Let's get on to who I would cast. Okay, my first choice is Will Poulter, right? I did a poll on my YouTube community section just a few weeks ago, probably like a month ago now, where I was like, who would you cast as Aegon the Conqueror? And I just gave two choices that I personally liked a lot, because I feel like my understanding of Aegon the Conqueror is a lot different than a lot of people that will comment online about who they think Aegon the Conqueror was, right? So there's no POVs from him. Obviously, we don't have any books that were written directly from his POV. All we have is the history that we're given in Fire and Blood, which is expanded upon what's initially given to us in A World of Ice and Fire. And obviously, you hear about Aegon the Conqueror all throughout the main books. But the image that I have in my head is Aegon is this enigmatic leader, right? This powerful figure who was imposing, yes, but ultimately it's mentioned in Fire and Blood and World of Ice and Fire that Aegon was able to get people to follow him because they sort of worshipped him. He was a good dude. That means he has a good personality. That means people like him. That means he probably was able to have a conversation with people, right? The few lines of dialogue that we do have of him saying is kind of like he's not an outright cruel dude. He kind of seems like he's got a good head on his shoulders. The mysterious part that history doesn't understand is his motivations to want to conquer Westeros. But ultimately, once he did it during his reign and his rule, right, the next 20 some odd years, Westeros loved this dude. They really fucked with him. Really, there wasn't any problem for House Targaryen until after Aegon the Conqueror died, and his sons and his children, right? So when I combine that with the fact that he did, there's this one thing that Aegon does in his life, that really makes me, I'll just make myself big because we were just looking at fucking Will Poulter there. One thing that he does that makes me realize, okay, he's not Maegor the Cruel. Okay, Maegor the Cruel is his son, yes, but Maegor has a blacksmith's build. That's mentioned canonically. And also, he was cutting down men twice and 3 times his age when he was 13. He cut a cat in half with a sword. His mother Visenya had a really hard time conceiving him with her brother Aegon, the Conqueror. Maegor was given steroids at a young age, and those steroids turned him into who he is. But Aegon, Maegor's father, is not Maegor. He doesn't have that massive figure of being described like this massive warrior. It's also mentioned that he's not necessarily a world-renowned fighter, right? He rode dragons. He's got a good head on his shoulders. He's an all-around, he's a well-rounded fighter. Like, let's say we're playing Elder Scrolls Online. Aegon the Conqueror, in my opinion, would be like a rogue class Khajiit, right? Because, okay, well, let me rephrase that. He would be a Khajiit, but also he would be a Nord. He would be a Khajiit Nord. You know anything about Elder Scrolls? A Khajiit are sneaky people, but ultimately they have wares if you have coin. All right, let me get back on track. I'm getting too sidetracked. So Aegon is like a well-rounded individual if you want to look at it from an RPG standpoint. He's got like 50 dexterity, 50 stamina, and 50 mana, right? So he's strong, he knows how to use magic, and he can move quickly. That's who he would be, well-rounded, right? Whereas Maegor the Cruel, often his image and his sort of the way he's depicted, it gets transferred to Aegon because everybody's like, well, Aegon the Conqueror is dead. Of course, if he's going to make a son, it's going to be that turns out like Maegor, then Aegon was probably like that. And another one of the reasons why people say that in canon is that his brother Aenys, so Aegon's first son with his first, well, it's really his second wife because he marries Visenya for duty because Visenya is his older sister, but then he marries Rhaenys for love because it's not normal for Valyrians and Targaryens to marry 2 of their sisters. It's normal for them to marry 1 of their sisters, but really you only marry 2 sisters or 2 family members in Valyria if you didn't ride dragons. So sorcerer princes and princesses would mostly princes, would marry 2 individuals in hopes to increase their chances of producing an heir that could ride a dragon, but also they would do things with blood magic and stuff, so they would often have 2 wives, right? So it wasn't common for Aegon to marry both his sisters. The reason why he did this is because he loved his sister Rhaenys, but he had to marry his sister Visenya. So anyway, the son that he has with Rhaenys, Aenys is his name. He's nothing like Maegor, and honestly, not that close to his father, Aegon. So people say that, and also the fact that every time, Aegon would sleep with both of his wives, but not equally. He would sleep with Rhaenys 9 nights out of every 10 to every 1 night that he would sleep with Visenya. So let's say you have a 10-day stretch. Aegon is banging Rhaenys 9 nights and then goes and sleeps with Visenya once. So that's why Aegon and Visenya had a hard time conceiving, but also he was in love with Rhaenys. So he's going to and the rumor was that when Aegon would go spend time with Visenya, Rhaenys would also entertain lovers, right? So that's why Aenys, who is this king right after Aegon, very forgetful, right? He's like the bridge in between Maegor the Cruel and Aegon the Conqueror. He loves art, loves music, just like his mother, Rhaenys, right? And Rhaenys would often have handsome musicians and magicians around her, and soothsayers, and like people who read poetry and stuff. She would always surround herself by artistic individuals because she loved the arts, right? So did Aegon, but he had to be the conqueror. So anyway, when you look at all of what I just listed, right, Aegon's probably not this savage blacksmith type of character. He's probably someone who's well-rounded, right? He fell in love with Rhaenys. They're probably very similar. So Aegon was probably like Rhaegar. He probably played the harp. It's not mentioned that he played the harp, but if he did, that would be mentioned. But he enjoyed music. He enjoyed painting. He enjoyed living life, right? And then when he loses Rhaenys, he goes on a hell rampage down in Dorne. So what I'm getting at here is he's a complex, sophisticated individual, and someone like Will Poulter could potentially pull this off. And also, the main reason why I pick Will is because he is not known for another role that would outshadow this Aegon the Conqueror, right? Like, he's famous, obviously. I know his work in Black Mirror and then also We're the Millers. Not the best comparison that I'm using as my evidence for why I picked him as my casting choice, but I feel like from what I've seen, he's capable of pulling this off. And like I said, the main reason being is because he's British. He sort of looks like Millie Alcock, and down that line a little bit. And also his age is sort of right around when Aegon the Conqueror conquers Westeros. He's blonde, so obviously blue eyes, blonde hair, that works well with the Targaryen wigs. And like I said, he's not known for something else, so this would be the thing that blows him up, in the sense that, like, my next casting choice, or I'm not even going to show him, I'll just say it, my next casting choice was Daniel Radcliffe. And the biggest problem with Daniel Radcliffe is that he's Harry Potter. He's going to be known always sort of as Harry Potter. I know I literally just said I wasn't going to show him, but it just helps prove my point. So the Harry Potter, Daniel Radcliffe, is obviously an amazing actor, right? He was good in Horns. He's good in every movie that I've seen him in outside of the Harry Potter films, and also he's really good in Harry Potter. But the biggest problem is that everybody's going to be looking at him and going, how is Aegon the Conqueror not acting like he didn't say Wingardium Leviosa wrong, right? Like, that would be... you'd be expecting him to whip out the wand and just, duel somebody real quick when, for instance, when we have the famous burning of Harrenhal. Harren the Black would get, one of the 7 deadly spells whisked away. Let me stop, right? So I picked him because of his acting skills, and he hasn't been in the Harry Potter movies since 2011. So it's been long enough, and also it's unexpected. And also he for sure beyond has the acting chops for it. Let me know your casting choices down below. Okay, so now I did have some casting for Rhaenys and Visenya, but I don't know those actors really at all. I could tell you, and you can let me know what you think down below, but for Visenya, I had Alyssa Sutherland. She was in the Vikings. Visenya is older than both Aegon and Rhaenys, right? So what that means is that I picked this actress because Alyssa Sutherland, because she's obviously older than Daniel Radcliffe, Will Poulter, and also I picked my pick for Rhaenys was Frida Gustafsson, and I feel like visually both of those actresses could pull off the role. And like I said, I don't really know that much about their work or if really they were in that much. I think they're both from Vikings and Vikings Valhalla. All right, so continuing on with my Catelyn Stark theory. Now, this is kind of scatterbrained. It's going to make me look scatterbrained. And if I offend anybody, I don't mean to. I'm just a nerd talking about nerdy stuff who doesn't necessarily filter himself all the time. How did Catelyn Stark come back? In the A Song of Ice and Fire books, she's Lady Stoneheart. She's still alive. Matter of fact, the idea in the fandom that Catelyn was going to come back as this zombie is what made me more interested into the show. So what I mean by that is, like, you know, my buddy who would convince me since the show came out to try to watch it. I didn't start watching until like 2013. So before that, he would say stuff like, yo, man, there's going to be zombies. There's already zombies. This one, like, he just, you know, saw on the forums online that she's going to come back as Lady Stoneheart. So when I heard that, and then I saw the Red Wedding, obviously I'm locked in, right? So in the books, she is killed at the Red Wedding, right? So right before, she claws her eyes out. I think she does it on the TV show. And then she grabs Walder Frey's child and then threatens to kill her, because at this point Robb Stark is still alive, and Robb like sort of gets up. Robb's dead. He's half dead. He kind of it's actually really sad because he lives twice. So after he dies, he wargs into his wolf's body, right? Greywind, and then Greywind is killed. So Robb dies twice, and that's 100% confirmed. Robb is a warg. He doesn't deny it like Jon Snow. He goes into it, and you know, when he dies, obviously his spirit is going to go into where he spent the most time at, his second body, Greywind, and he's in the kennels outside of where the Red Wedding is happening, at. So the twins, right? And they go and shoot Greywind with the bow and arrow, and then stitch his head onto Robb's body. It's crazy. But anyway, Catelyn, the sacrificing one of Walder Frey's child doesn't work because he's like, I've got more. So she's killed. Right before that, she claws her eyes out, and she has her throat slit. She's thrown into a river for 3 days, right? That's what happens to her. In the TV show, she's dead. She dies. Like, I don't even know if they show her being thrown into a river. She just has her throat slit, and that's it. She has out this really anguished cry right after she kills a person. It's terrible, right? But in the books, right before that being when Ned Stark is still alive, she thinks to herself, she's not too young, she could still make a child. Her and Ned could have another child. Then Ned thinks to himself, about halfway through Game of Thrones, in his POV that he has where he argues with Robert about killing Daenerys, he sort of storms off, and he decides, Robert dismisses him as Hand of the King, and Ned decides, yo, it's time to go back. He already told Catelyn to go ready the North's defenses. He knows that the Lannisters potentially killed Breanne, and Catelyn came all the way down south to tell him that it was them, because when they tried to sneak back in to finish the job, she found this cat's paw dagger, and Littlefinger tells her that it's owned by Tyrion Lannister, right? So Catelyn makes her way, starts to go back up north, runs into Tyrion at the tavern by the inn at the crossroads, and then he gets held captive, and she takes him to go to trial at the Eyrie, right? But during Ned's chapter, when he's dismissed by Robert, so while this is sort of simultaneously happening with Catelyn, when she's taking Tyrion to the Vale, Ned is like, he just tells his steward to get ready, pack all our stuff up. We're about to leave King's Landing, and his steward goes, yo, we need a fortnight to do that. And he's like, I don't even think we have a fortnight. But then Ned immediately thinks to himself, like, no, Robert's probably cooled down, but I'm still going to leave. And then he starts to think about going back home to Winterfell. He's like, I should have never left. He thinks about Bran, what happened to Bran. And then he also thinks, key moment here, him and Catelyn could still have another child, right? And he pounds Catelyn twice. So good that right afterwards, she thinks to herself, oh, my pussy still aches. Ned's got a huge horse cock. I kind of had to censor myself because I forgot this is going on YouTube. But anyway, I'm pretty sure they didn't have contraceptives back then. There was no lambskin condoms, right? So he probably finished, she's potentially pregnant. What saved her life is not Beric Dondarrion giving her a kiss, is the unborn child that was murdered innocently at the Red Wedding through The hospitality laws that are in Westeros is like once you eat of a person's bread and salt, you cannot harm them, even if they're your enemies. They're now your guest under your roof. You have to protect them as if they're your kin, they're your family. But obviously Walder Frey broke that. So that law being broken, and along with the fact that Catelyn has a northern-born baby, unborn baby in her, right, is what allows her to come back. So a lot of people think that she's a Fire White, but she's actually not. So Beric Dondarrion doing the last kiss over her brings her back through R'hllor, but not the normal R'hllor, his opposite side. They like people who follow R'hllor call him the shadow, R'hllor's shadow, or the opposite of R'hllor. He does all the negative things that R'hllor, the Lord of Light, does good, right? But really, it's a misunderstanding. It's the same god, and R'hllor is actually a northern god, right? That was forgotten by the North. And they just call him the Great Under, and they do things like hang human meat in trees and put their skulls and remains inside mouths that they carve from the faces that were carved by the Children of Force to these gods. One of them was R'hllor. The main one was probably R'hllor. This is a theory. I forgot to say put your tinfoil caps on. So Catelyn is an Ice White, which is why she's a lot darker than Beric. Obviously, the way she dies is darker than the many different ways that Beric Dondarrion dies, but she's brought back because of that unborn child. She's not a Fire White. She's an Ice White. And, yeah, that was the theory. Let me know what you think down below. Okay, so next up for the next part, actually, let me do this first. I'm going to pick 5 individuals. Remember, there's hundreds of characters, named individuals in the books, and like maybe, this is embarrassing that I don't know this as many times as I've read A Song of Ice and Fire. There's several POVs, more than 10, okay? Let me name all the ones that I know off the top of my head. Let me do that. Ned Stark, Tyrion, Jon Snow, Daenerys, Cersei, Jaime, Brienne, Sansa, Arya, Breanne. You have the prologue, the epilogues. So, Pate the Pig Boy, Varmir Sixskins, Maester Crescent, Barristan Selmy. No, Barristan isn't. Well, Barristan is a POV, so yes, but he's not he's not the epilogue or prologue. He has POVs in Dance of Dragons. But then you also have Kevin Lannister. So I just named a bunch, right? But I'm going to pick out of those people 5 of them who I think would be the best to have sex with, right? I'm going to be fair. I've got both male and females on this list, all right? So who's the best at fucking? First up, we got Yara. She's my number 1 pick. And these are listed in order from best to worst. This is my number 1 pick, okay? Yara, for a very simple reason, in my opinion, would be amazing to have sex with. Like, I'm going to bounce myself around the thing like that. Like, remember in The Office when they're all sitting in the well, that's making me dizzy. And they're sitting in the boardroom or whatever, the conference room, and they're all watching the DVD screensaver, and they all start cheering when it finally hits the corner and turns a different color, and Michael thinks they're cheering for him. It's hilarious, right? But anyway, one reason why, okay? Yara, in my opinion, would be down to... Okay, so it's not just one reason. I lied. There's multiple reasons, right? So the first one is that Yara would be down for a threesome. For sure. For sure. Probably with Daisy Mormont, who's currently like her... Stannis is her captor, but she's like her watcher. And then also, you had some people that just showed up at the Iron Bank. But she flirts with the idea of what it would be like to go for a tumble with certain individuals. And in specific, Christopher Botley, she flat out turns down because he's too inexperienced. That's something that someone who knows what they're doing... Well, let me put it this way. There's this POV that Yara has where she's doing... It's hard to mention this on YouTube without being demonetized, but I didn't do it. I didn't write it, but Yara's kind of doing like a rip fantasy. Rip, replace the I in rip with A an E at the end. You get what I'm saying. She kind of has that going with this dude that she's, sleeping with. But when you're reading her POV chapter, you don't exactly know that. She's sort of playing along. So you're thinking like, what? Because like this dude basically walks up and he's like, turn over, bend over, right? Or I'm going to cut you. And then like they sort of have this thing. But ultimately, the thoughts that she has when they're having intercourse and where like the exact line is, her cunt became the world. That makes me think she's got some wet ass pussy. So that's the number one reason why Yara's my pick. Also, I'm a big fan of sailing around the world. I feel like she would do that. Also, she probably would teach me a thing or two about what it's like to be out at sea for a long time. I don't know, but yeah, she's my number one pick. Sir Hunts is going wild on this one. Now listen, hear me out. Samwell is basically a virgin, all right? He does have sex with Gilly on the boat with Maester Aemon's corpse watching. In the TV show, I think they had him get jumped at the wall, and then Gilly felt sad for him, so she slept with him then. But nah, in the books, he's way cooler. Sam's the man in the books. He's the man in the TV show, but he's more of the man in the books, right? So basically what happens in the books is she's sad and he's sad, and they got drunk, and then they hook up, right? And Sam, like, sucks on her titties, gets some breast milk in his mouth. But if I was a woman, I feel like Sam would be, or gay, whatever, right? Sam would be an excellent lover, right? Not only is he robust in the field of knowledge, but also, according to George, according to canon, he's got a fat pink cock that looks like the mast of a ship. So, it juts straight out. So, like, when you combine that with the fact that he is kind of inexperienced, but also willing to learn, I feel like he'd be really good. Also, check this. The knowledge that he has for books, like, for wanting to, like, he's not excited about forging his links in his maester's chain, but, John kind of has him becoming a maester at the wall. He's already, like, training with maesters at the wall in Ravenry, right? And he's read books his whole life, so he's been becoming a maester his entire life. So just imagine if he started getting some pussy. Imagine if he puts that energy into that, right? Or some butthole, right? Or what do you think? That's why Sam is my number 2 pick. Now, I know this list is crazy, right? Next up is Tyrion. It's an obvious choice. I don't got to spend that much time explaining, but Tyrion, as far as Yara, most experienced. He slept with the most whores. So, like, he's got a reputation for it. Like, in his head, he thinks about it, but also his father literally tells him to stop doing it, so much to the point where he's like, look, I'm going to kill you if you do it again. I'm going to put you in jail and pretend that I was fair and had a trial, but ultimately I'm going to kill you for doing this. So, my opinion, Tyrion, along with his money, probably show you a good time. So Tyrion's my number 3 choice. I don't got to spend that much time explaining this. Just realize that Tyrion may be a little person, but his penis matches the size of his head, and he's got the biggest head of any POV character. So, there you go. All right, now lastly, Cersei. Another easy pick. I know I got 2 Lannisters on there. I got a thing for blondes, and redheads, and brunettes. She's crazy. And you know how the rumor goes, is crazy people are usually crazy in bed as well. But also, listen to this. Cersei would also be down for the threesome. She kind of was already doing it. She loves Mirish Swamp, like myself. She's freaky enough to do it with her brother, right? But also her cousin. But also really anybody who's in her vicinity. Cersei's my 4th pick for who I think would be the best. I don't really need to explain it neither. But, like, just know that she is in a position right now in which, like, the last that where we leave her with in A Dance with Dragons, she wouldn't have actually made this list because her hair was cut off, and I don't like that. Just kidding. Just kidding. That's not why. But no, it's because she started to change. She won't be as fun. The stripping her naked, forcing her to walk through the streets, have poop. She falls in poop. People are jeering and pointing at her. She hurts her ankle. She potentially has a really bad case of tetanus because she scrapes her leg and then gets poop directly smeared in it. And I know tetanus isn't the disease you get. It's septic. She probably is septic. That version of Cersei, no, doesn't make this list because she's starting to atone. She had the Walk of Atonement. She's going to become even crazier, but not in the direction I want her to go, which would be in the bed, right? So, the first version we meet of Cersei in a Game of Thrones, we don't have her POV until A Feast for Crows, if I'm not mistaken. Like, she kind of replaces most of where we would have Tyrion's chapters, but we don't get Tyrion's POV at all in A Feast for Crows because he's over in Essos after he kills his dad, Tywin, at the end of the Storm of Swords. So Cersei replaces him in that, but that version of Cersei, that's the one I want. Right after Tyrion leaves. And then also in the beginning, she's crazy. That's the version of Cersei, though, that makes this list. Then next up and last on the list, we'll kind of wrap up this video. Been all over the place. Ned Stark. Ned Stark probably is a horsecock. Reason why I say this is because Catelyn sort of just accepts the fact that he has a bastard living with him. Like, in modern day era, if you have a child outside of marriage or whoever, it's not absurd for the child to live in the same house with, his half-brothers and sisters. But back then, it was absolutely absurd. If Ned didn't have a giant penis, do you think, if Ned had a tiny penis, don't you think Catelyn would be like, hey, man, you're not that good. Get this dude out of the house. He doesn't need to sleep in here. He doesn't need to grow up amongst our actual children. Buy him some land outside North. Go visit him on some hunting. Get him out of here. But she never really says this. And the one time she does say something about it, Ned goes, I'll hear no more of that. And she just accepts it. And when you read her POV, you realize she's not someone who just accepts something. She's always, thinking about things. She's always rationalizing different situations, trying to either put herself in another person's shoes or thinks of how things should go and how they ultimately, things would be different if she had more say-so and she wasn't. She's outspoken, right? So my whole point is Ned mentions this one time and she never brings it up again, and the only reason why is because he's laying pipe. You have a giant penis like me. You don't argue a lot, but when you say something, it carries distance because... I'm just kidding, I don't have a giant penis. And I'm just pretending here. I don't mean this. This is really chauvinistic. I'm just trying to be funny. The whole list is chauvinistic because I'm comparing fictional characters and what it would be like, right? But listen, you don't have a giant penis. If you say something and it goes that far as it's never brought up again, even though Catelyn thinks about it, she just never brings it up again. And yeah, Ned got mad or whatever, but really it's because he's got a giant penis. And then also what I mentioned earlier about Catelyn being pregnant, she thinks to herself about how her, can I say pussy on YouTube? Well, we gonna find out in this video, but she thinks about how her nether lips, as George puts it, are tingling and they ache, and it's kind of sore down there. So that, in my opinion, confirms, and the fact that Ned looks like a horse, he's got a horse cock. All right, well, I want to thank you all so much for watching. If you could, please slap a like on this video. Also, make sure you subscribe, and then also, this is the most important part. Please do me a magical favor. God damn, click on this thing. Do me a magical favor and subscribe to me here on YouTube, please. I don't do this as often as I should, but my emblem down there, me holding the shield down right here, that was done by Nylana Cassie, Reflective Rambling. She's a member of my Patreon, but also she's an artist. Cassie, if you're watching it, you made it this far in the video, please comment down below so people can go follow you on Twitter. And also, this painting right here of Daemon, that's done by my boy, J Fox. That came to me. That's hand done. That's an original, that's real paint, right? He sent that to me all the way from the UK. So, if you want to buy some art from him, if you're a fan of this painting, I haven't had anybody that's commented anything negative about it. And I feel like 10,000 people have at least seen it now. Go follow him. As some more motivation, in my next live stream that I'll be doing here on YouTube, I'm going to be giving away digital prints of either this or some of his other A Song of Ice and Fire related work. So one of the rules to that is that you got to follow him on Instagram is J_Fox. But if you can't find him because his account is private, go to my Instagram and look at the people who I follow. J Fox is there. Also, I've tagged him in a bunch of posts on Instagram. So yeah, please go follow him. Please go follow Cassie as well. She made this amazing art for me. I actually have this available in t-shirts over on Teespring. Eventually, I'm going to be changing what platform I use to sell my merch because Teespring isn't the best at getting stuff out fast enough, and also they charge a lot as a minimum to make the product. But, if I actually start selling more stuff, I probably will make something on like Spreadshop. But thank you for watching. If you can't do any of that, you can't join my Patreon. If you want to, you can join for like $2 or $3. You'll get content like this all the time. There's some exclusive content up there, like 35 or 36 episodes videos as well. I think there's like 20 videos up there that are all exclusive to Patreon that you have access. You unlock it immediately. You can watch me for like 24 hours straight or something if you can join for like $2 or $3. Also, a special shout out to Tyler Schnabel, The North Must Remember, and Breanne Johnson, my girl. They are all members, executive producers of this video, but members on my Patreon on a tier known as the Dragon Knight. And they, thank you for your support for joining that tier. But thank you for watching. If you can't do any of that, watching me here on YouTube is the best thing to do. So have a good rest of your week or weekend whenever you're watching this. And Winds of Winter is coming. House of the Dragon Season 2 is coming. An Aegon movie and an Aegon series is coming. They've got Duncan Egg still in the works. We've got probably a Doom of Valyria. It's a great time to be in a Song of Ice and Fire fan. Also, I've dropped Harry Potter and some Star Wars content. You can check my YouTube channel for that. Thank you for watching.